Okay, good morning everyone. My name's Sam Metcalf. I'm the editor of the businessdesk.com in the Midlands. Welcome you all to our latest Q&A webinar in conjunction today with Hallam. It's entitled Growth Lessons for Uncertain Times. Today our panel will discuss how, even in the depths of a crisis as severe as the COVID-19 pandemic, business owners can still learn vital lessons on how to grow their businesses. We'll also look at how companies can pivot from a defensive strategy to an offensive footing so they hit the ground running when the market returns. As you can see today, we've got a fantastic panel for you and some real top-class business leaders from across the region. I'm just going to ask them to introduce themselves briefly now, starting with you, Baback.
Good morning. My name is Baback Yazdani. I'm the Dean of Nottingham Business School at Nottingham Trent University.
Jake.
Good morning, my name is Jake Third. I'm the Client Services Director at a digital marketing agency, Hallam. We specialise in helping B2B businesses take their marketing online.
And Sarah.
Hi everybody, I'm Sarah Walker-Smith. I'm the Chief Executive of Shakespeare Martineau. We're a national full-service law firm, but we also have a few offices here in the Midlands, including in Nottingham.
Serena.
Good morning everyone, I'm Serena Humphrey. I'm Managing Director of the F Word. We are financial training and coaching for small businesses. As you can imagine right now, we're pretty busy helping clients get their businesses back on track.
Steve.
Good morning. So Steve Arnold, I'm the CEO and co-founder of eDay's Absence Management. We're a software as a service HR tech company based in Nottingham. Our mission is very specific. We're trying to become the global leader in employee absence management and wellbeing solutions.
And last but certainly not least, Susan.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Susan Hallam. I'm the founder of a digital marketing agency based in Nottingham City Centre. We employ just over 50 people, all of whom are working at home at the moment. And I'm proud to say that we are the current holder of Google's Top Agency Award for Europe, Middle East and Africa for growing businesses online.
Okay, thanks everyone. Just a reminder to everybody tuning in today, if you've got a question for one of our panelists, and I'm sure you have, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and we'll try and get to you. We also got a poll running next to the Q&A button. There's a polls button. Today's question's pretty simple. What will your approach to marketing be over the next 6 months? Right, we've got loads to get through over the next 45 or so minutes. So starting at 10, Susan, set the scene. Where do you think we are as we enter? Is it week 7 of lockdown?
Yeah, it's I think probably most of the people on this webinar, alongside us are doing the same kind of things that we are. We're looking after our colleagues, we're looking after our family, we're looking after our community. I think most of us are looking after our finances. But personally, I think there's been a bit of a shift in the mindset of the business leaders that I've been talking to. I think we're recognizing the fact that we're entering a period of ambiguity. And I think there's this kind of acceptance that we're coming into this ambiguity, and what we need to be thinking about and what the kind of discussions we're having with our clients have to do with the fact that, if your business is going to survive, it cannot stop. So what we need to be doing, we can't be freezing our businesses. We can't be not taking any action. So what I think the kind of discussions that we're having, and I think the shift I'm seeing, Sam, is that we're seeing more businesses starting to think about what kind of action they need to take to sustain and protect their business, to look at the short term and also to look at the long term. So I think, Sam, for me, the shift over the last recent time has been this change in mindset.
Okay, thanks, Susan. Sarah, you're the head of a business that's got 900 people, is that right?
Yeah, roughly that.
How are you coping with keeping all those people on board?
Similar to Susan, we're pretty much all working from home. We've got 1 or 2 key workers that need to go into the offices. I think in those early days, it felt like a BCP response, a business continuity response. I think it now feels like the normal way of operating. But what we did quite early on was to get ourselves into separate tracks so that we could keep some people absolutely focused on that BCP response to keep the lights on, to get everything running. Some people absolutely focused on what we call doing the right thing, which is to properly understand the financial modelling and where we needed to go to make sure sure that we could, protect the business, and we all know how vital cash is. But we set up a stream very quickly, looking at the future opportunities and planning to come out. So we kind of did a bit of a divide and conquer. And where we're at now is the BCP element has disappeared. The keeping the finances stuff is we've got a decent plan. So all of our energy now is shifting to the future, the opportunities, and really trying to take control of it. And to just pick up on something Susan said, I agree about the point of ambiguity. What we're trying to do is say, okay, let's focus on the things we can control, and let's make plans around those things rather than get concerned about the stuff that we can't control.
Steve, as a tech online firm, how much have you had to change for the last month and a half, 7 weeks?
Well, we're in a very fortunate situation. I guess being a tech firm, we already had a lot of working from home going on. So everyone was working on laptops. Everyone had web-based systems for absolutely everything. So the business was prepared. And I feel very happy about that transition that we started making about 18 months ago towards that situation. So it was very much easier, for us to be able to make that transition. The key thing for us was how we engage people, how we keep the morale, how we keep the focus, how we keep everyone aligned to our business goals. So we basically upped the ante significantly on the communications channels, much more contact from me as CEO, much more contacts with my leadership team as a group, and regular happy hours and communications as all hands meetings with the entire team. So that was some of our focus. But yeah, the transition was much simpler for us as a tech business. Not much infrastructure really, other than people.
So, Serena, you're coming into contact with very small businesses each day through your Corona Business Advice group, aren't you?
Yeah.
And they see really smaller businesses have really quite struggled with lots of things, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the group, we've got 3,000 people in the group now, and it really does range from your micros through to your multi-million pound companies. It's got some fairly big Nottingham names in the group as well. And it really is that, that initial fear and terror of what was going on through to the acceptance, and the acceptance that we're now in a very uncertain time, and what can people do about that. And I think it's been a really massively mixed bag depending on individual circumstances. People who didn't have cash reserves are in a much, much worse place than people who've got cash in their businesses. And what we think the businesses we're talking to, our clients and the people in our group, is the next big issue is the winding down of the furlough, because it's this financial cliff edge that people are now worried about, and how we come out of that.
Baback, you come at it from a slightly different angle. You're sort of from the outside looking in almost. What have you made of the last 6 or 7 weeks?
Well, yes, we are very much of a people business, as obviously you know, and the university has about 32,000 students, quite a few of them physically on our campuses all the time. And the switch for us initially was very similar to what Sarah mentioned, that we went into how do we transition from a face-to-face business to an online business. And that occurred probably over a period of about 3 weeks. And we switched everything online. I'm not saying it was optimal, because it wasn't, but we then stabilized and started to think, okay, where do we go now, and start planning for next year. Quite a lot of what we have to do is cognizant on what the government decides about, for example, A-level results, what happens in the future. So we are going through various scenario planning. In that process, what came across to us was quite a lot of our students needed further support, quite a lot of our staff needed further support. And that was, so for example, the university has dispatched over 1,000 laptops to our students and staff, more to our students than staff. Somehow we were all thinking all our students are online and on demand, and everybody is so fluent with IT. That doesn't seem to be the case for a significant number of our cases, but we've managed to get them all working from online. And this morning I was told, we have in our business school, which is a smaller part of the university, obviously, we have just had a hand-in date, and the vast majority of our students handed in their stuff online, and it worked very well. So it's been interesting, but what is now obviously in our front is how do we plan for next year? And that may sound a lot more complex than people may see from an outside world. Because,
Yeah.
for example, just in my school, in Nottingham Business School, we repatriated 150 students from all over the world, from Peru to Korea, and all over Europe and all over America. And that was a logistical exercise of its own.
Yeah.
But I think if we keep our purpose in mind, which is to serve our students and help the community and advance the research, we've also collaborated with Nottingham University and brought in quite a lot of help for the NHS and the other services that are operating at stress levels.
Okay. Thanks for that, Baback. Jake, I want to come to you. Among the sort of horror stories we've heard, we've also heard, and we've got one or two with us today, we've heard of some companies not only surviving, but thriving. I'm going to ask you, do you think this is down to luck, which sector they're in, careful management, or just sort of sheer entrepreneurialism?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question, Sam. And I think you can almost categorize companies into three different areas with this. There is the sort of sector, product or service that they're exposed to. So for example, if you're in retail or travel right now, no matter how good your leadership is, you're going to be having a hard time. And conversely, compared to that, say if you have an e-commerce business that's selling home workout equipment, you're going to be doing really well. So one part of it is the sector you're exposed to, and that's historic. There's not much you can do about that. The second point, or the second category of company for me, is your financial position when COVID hit. How much cash do you have in a bank? And whilst there's a lot of clever financial planning you should be doing now, and people like Serena are great at that, the amount of cash you had in the bank when COVID hit is again another historic factor that you can't control, which leaves for me the third category of company, and that's the culture and attitudes and leadership of the organization, which is within your control. And I would say there were huge differences when it comes to leadership. We've got a saying, which is there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. Leaders can feel at the moment like they're trapped in the headlights, or some other leaders like rising to the challenge. And often that's a temperamental difference in the leader. The other final thing I would say on, are people going to thrive or are they going to survive when you take out the sector they're in and you take out their financial position, is about their organizational structure and their organizational strategy. I think organizations that are decentralized, and what I mean by that is, yes, direction comes from the top, but decisions are made on the ground. I think decentralized organizations are going to thrive more than centralized organizations. I think that organizations that have got trust inbuilt as part of their culture, because trust is a currency, and I think organizations operating in a high trust environment, I think they're going to find that this move to remote working is going to be conducive to thriving. And then finally, I would say that people who have managed to skill their workforce into multidisciplinary generalists are going to do better than workforces that are primarily single skill set. Because you could see, with furloughing and redundancies, you could quite easily see an entire skill set removed from your organization. If your workforce are multidisciplinary generalists, you're going to survive much better. So yeah, I'd say the main things there: decentralized versus centralized decision making, the level of trust within your organization, and reskilling your workforce. And all of them, for me, are a product of the leadership of the organization.
Okay, Jake, this brings in Sarah and Steve, doesn't it? Does any of that ring true with you two guys? Is that what you've been doing in your businesses, Sarah? Do you want to kick off?
I could have literally word for word, I was reflecting on this point, Jake, that answer was spot on as far as I'm concerned. And to bring in Serena, what Serena said, where you started this crisis, obviously this initial phase will determine what you've had to do. And then shifting the agility, shifting the mindset, shifting the decision making. I'd written the word agility, and I think agility is everything at the moment. Not having long-term fixed plans, being absolutely in tune with your customers and your workforce, and kind of tacking a bit like you do if you're sailing, not being afraid to change direction very, very quickly, and the devolved decision making. So I won't repeat all of that. The one other thing though that I think will stand people in good stead, and it is linked to your point about trust, is the way we behave now will be with us for a very, very long time. If you think back to 2008, the stories about how businesses behaved, it stays with their brand, it stays with their employer brand. So for me, it's absolutely about how we are seen to be behaving at the moment, and that will build trust in the brand and in the workforce. But yeah.
Yeah, the only things I would add really are there's absolutely no doubt at all that there's a lot of luck involved. in terms of what sector your business is in the first place, how aggressive you've been with your growth strategy. You know, have you been running very close to the line because you're going all out for growth? Well, that could be a tricky thing to manage right now because your cash position might be very different, and that luck element in terms of what service are you offering, how easy is it to change the service. And I've heard some amazing stories from companies like you know, pubs that have become food and delivery outlets. So, you know, last night I went to a van in a park that was doing fish and chips, and we had some fish and chips that we'd ordered online somehow. My wife had done to get this fish and chips, and there was some great innovation around some of the big companies as well, like Louis Vuitton. I know they've turned from perfume through to hand sanitizers, so their plant allowed that flexibility. A lot of companies don't have that. You know, if you're selling high-end shoes in retail stores, it's extremely difficult to adapt. So you're really looking at preserving the business and trying to, you know, keep it going, and cost optimization. So that element of luck is very important, but also that ability to innovate and adapt the business.
Okay.
And I'd just like to very briefly pick up on Sarah's point as well, that if we do look at kind of the mindset that leaders are having, I'm finding the folk that I'm talking to recognize the fact that things do go wrong in life. In business, stuff goes wrong, and things are going wrong right now. But the question would be, do we have a track record of sorting things out when things go wrong in the past? And I think that kind of resilience, I think if we look at the kind of what businesses are doing, what are they doing? I think also it's worth saying that many, my own business, we've been trading for 20 years. So we've traded through a recession before, but we've never traded through a pandemic before. So I think these are all brand new things. And finally, just to finish, I've just come off a webinar with INSEAD in Paris. And the one point he wanted to make is a reminder, which I think is useful to all the business owners that are participating in the webinar, is that Chinese word, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's a good cliche, is the Chinese word for crisis is the combination of the two words opportunity and danger. So, I mean, all of us, we are in dangerous positions right now, but there are opportunities. So I think a lot of it, Sam, has to do with mindset.
Okay. Thanks, Susan. I was going to ask about changing course next, but Helen Taylor's sent a question in. Thanks, Helen. I'm going to come to Baback first and then possibly Serena. So Baback, how can we help SMEs utilize disruption at this time to help them pivot, innovate, differentiate and find new space in the market? Helen says, from what I can see, this sort of help is missing currently, and students could help with this with online internships perhaps. Is that anything?
Sure. And some of the answer to that has already been mentioned, because it is partly about agility and thinking how you can switch from one mode to another. Partly it is about allowing your creative colleagues to come up with ideas and get those things done, but to do them quickly, because as everybody knows, in small businesses, either they are operating and they are operating on steroids at the moment, or they are completely shut. And the completely shut ones, obviously, some of them are trying to find new avenues. And those who are operating in a different mode, they've adopted they've probably accelerated their previous strategies, and they've got into different ways of supplying customers and attending to them. As with students, I mean, for example, we operate a very large number of placements and internships and other things that are getting students into businesses to work. Now, what happens at the moment with that is some of that has been pulled back. So we have with large companies, for example, BA and others, obviously those have been pulled back. But we are finding opportunities in much more locally for our students, and students who are quite keen to do these experiences are still getting them.
Okay.
It's also interesting just to mention is the resilience of the businesses we've worked with in terms of projects. So we can deliver projects to these businesses online rather than, so consultancy type projects are still continuing and are actually probably vibrant in certain sectors. It has become a little sectoral.
Okay, Serena, online internships, is that something that your clients would welcome and you as a business owner?
You know, it's not something I see a lot of in smaller businesses, I have to say. I mean, we work with hundreds and hundreds of companies. I just don't see that being used very much in the sort of the up to £3-4 million mark.
Okay.
That's just my exposure, but I just we don't see a lot of that. Where it's the larger companies that tend to access it, I don't know.
I think that is true. That is true. The smaller businesses, obviously, they naturally have less opportunities for this.
But maybe we're missing a trick. Maybe we could be using that more.
Sam, there is help online. I know sometimes navigating is a nightmare. The government website is fairly helpful, but you know, many businesses are offering free help to SMEs, and it is genuinely free. We have a free helpline and a 20-minute Zoom call for people. So, and I know we're not the only ones. So I find that LinkedIn is a really good place for seeing where some of this kind of online help, and I'm seeing a lot of collaboration and people doing it because it's the right thing to do rather than because it's being driven by a commercial motive. So I think, Helen, you know, if you need more help, do kind of look online. There is stuff out there that I'm seeing, and hopefully that's getting through.
Okay, Susan, there's a question from Nick Mellors. To what extent are you seeing companies furloughing business development staff? Nick says certainly initially it felt as though companies were shutting down BD and not remembering how long their sales pipeline took to come through. So when they come back, there will still be a long lag before sales complete. What do you think about that?
I would say from practical experience, we have been running webinars in terms for our clients and the kind of people that we're talking to, and we're inviting business development people to come along. And we're finding there's a very good response. So in the main, we're finding that our clients are almost in a sense irrespective of the sector, are keeping their business development teams in place. There have been a number of people who've been scaling back their marketing teams, but they are keeping a core of marketing activity going on. I think the idea would be is that you do have to sustain this visibility of your brand awareness, even if you're sustaining positive messaging in terms of compassion and relationship building. Even these are sending good messages out. As we were saying, it's what's your legacy going to look like when we come out of this situation. But I would say, Nick, no, I'm not finding huge numbers of business development staff being furloughed. Obviously, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. I don't know. What do you reckon, Jake?
Yeah, good way of putting me on the spot. I'll come up with an answer for that one. I'd say the main thing to point out is that people seem to be doubling down with their existing suppliers more. So I'd imagine a lot of the people on this call are in the B2B space. We're seeing that people are doubling down with their existing suppliers. Often it's not exactly a time where people want to move suppliers. Sometimes it's better the devil that you know. So there's an argument inbuilt in that to say, okay, well, new business staff, BD staff, are they as necessary as you would have thought? My argument is that they are still necessary. And one of the reasons for that is there's a positive to the fact that people aren't looking to change suppliers. That means that your existing customers are going to be staying with you. So I would argue that companies should be doubling down on their existing customer base, making sure you're giving excellent customer service, making sure you're calling them on a regular basis. And maybe there's an opportunity to grow the revenues from your existing customers. So potentially repurposing some of those BD staff into more of an account management kind of role. Yeah.
Sam, if I could step in on this one, because we've had this exact question, you know, come in pretty early on about, right, what are we going to do about BD now? And so a couple of things I would add. Firstly, we did look very much at our existing customers and thought this is the time where you need to communicate with your customers more than ever. So we really upped the ante, like Susan said, on webinars and customer knowledge and understanding of how eDays specifically as a system can help businesses during this time. Because a lot of our companies are using our system to log the sicknesses and the self-isolations and the absence reasons and the symptoms for sickness, which is obviously going to be absolutely essential now going forward. So we wanted to make sure that all of our customers knew what they could get from the system. But from a BD perspective, we've upped the ante. Again, we thought, right, let's get the PR machine moving quicker. So we're investing more in our suppliers from a PR perspective so we can get our brand out there. But that's very much because we've got a system that can help companies when they come out of this lockdown period. And I think there probably might even be government mandates to make sure that companies are logging information regarding employee sickness. So for us personally, it's let's increase the BD activity, but let's not try and sell to them. Let's just let companies know about us. Let's be informative, educational to businesses. We've got a webinar a little bit like this one running next week, which has got a couple of hundred sign-ups already. And it's all about employee well-being and sickness and mental health. And it's got some of our customers, as well as one of our partners who does a well-being solution with online virtual GP. So we're trying to do all that, as opposed to just trying to sell companies e-days. That will come later as companies make their own decisions on their own expenditure, whether they're ready to invest in new tools. And I think that's the better way to come out of this, rather than trying to phone people up, trying to sell them something at the time where it's absolutely the wrong thing probably to do for them.
Okay, we've got quite a really good question from Jodie Downs from Mattioli Woods. It was something that was picked up on a webinar we held yesterday. At the moment, I'm going to open this up to the entire panel. At the moment, there is a great deal of sort of helping each other, isn't there, and connectivity. But eventually, that will surely end, and people are going to want to get ahead of their counterpart, a competitor. Do you think, how long maybe do you think this can be, the sort of help and connectivity can be sustained into the future? I'm going to ask Sarah.
Okay, so I call this abundance mentality, and I've been going on about it for years actually. I used to work at Boots the Chemist, and we found this really interesting thing happen. So I'm going to talk shampoo to you for a second. So it's really interesting. The more competitors' products were together on the same gondola, the same shelf of shampoo, the more they all sold. And I learned this really fantastic lesson, which is if you focus on making the cake bigger, you will take a bigger individual share of that cake. If you focus on just winning a bigger slice, sorry, I'm mixing cake and shampoo now, it's probably not a good fit. But if you focus on fighting for your own slice, or if you were a supplier focusing to get your shampoo on that shelf, actually your sales went down. So what I learned very quickly was if we all focus on growing the market, or getting our economy back to positive, confident growth, etc., we will all do better. So that's been a principle that stayed with me for a very long time. I like the level of collaboration that's going on at the moment. I hope I will do what I can to try and keep that going beyond this.
The hospitality sector does that very well, doesn't it? The hospitality sector likes clusters because people go from one to the other. Serena, you run that big group, nearly 3,000 members. You said now. I've looked at that Facebook page. There's great collaboration. Do you think it will last?
It's interesting. In the early days, it was very much about the fear, the panic, and the rules were changing day by day, and people were very afraid. There's 5 of us who are running the group, and we all made the choice straight early on that this will be completely unbranded. So we don't promote ourselves at all. We don't mention our companies. We don't do anything at all that mentions anything that what we do. And it is that massive just collaboration of everybody is helping everyone, and we quickly take down any post that's promotional. I would love to think that this spirit of cooperation will carry on in the long term, and that this changes us. And my worry is that it's because everyone's got time on their hands, and there's that time to give more. I mean, we very much hope that we can transition our group through from being the panic, the response to the panic, to being a genuine long-term support place, because people have really, in that group where there are smaller companies, a lot of them where they haven't got the money for advice, to come and find somewhere they can find the facts out and talk to other business owners has been invaluable for a lot of people. So, I mean, I really hope the spirit continues. I really do.
Perhaps I could join in there. I think collaboration will last a lot longer than people realize, because we now see how interdependent the parts of our economy are. So suddenly, you have the leisure industry stopping. We have impacts all the way to Rolls-Royce that makes aero engines for aircraft to move around the world. So there's a huge amount of interdependency that we don't realize. I think also people realize on a local level how important it is to help each other. I think this will last a lot longer. The other thing that I think will be in people's minds and business leaders' minds is that the supply chains, how we can make ourselves a bit more resilient by being a bit more local supply-wise. And the very long supply chains obviously have helped in cost reductions for a long time. But we can see that this has a potentially devastating impact when things go into crisis mode.
Okay.
And the connectivity of the world makes that crisis mode more possible.
Okay. Susan, let's look to the future. I think we all wanted to do that a little bit, didn't we, during this? What opportunities rather do you think are presenting themselves to business owners right now? And how do you see the next phase of the pandemic unfolding for business owners?
Gosh, if I knew, wouldn't I be a genius on that one? Thanks for that one, Sam. I do, though, more seriously, is I do think that we all understand that our customers are changing. Their behavior is changing. What they want from us is changing. The way that we serve them is changing. These changes are happening now. And I think very much like Sarah was saying, I think these changes are going to stick. So that the way that we are able to be working remotely, the way we're servicing businesses, I think these changes are going to continue. I guess what we also need to be thinking about is a lot of the data that we had and our understanding of our customers, we can pretty much throw that out the window now. So what they need and what they require is evolving in such a way that we now need, most of us, and again, myself included, we are sitting down and looking at our business modeling, we're looking at our business offering, how are we going to be servicing our clients? And I think that probably will be a top priority for all of us moving forward.
Okay, so, sorry, Serena, yeah?
Yeah, on that point, I think it's this huge opportunity. I mean, yes, there is a crisis and there's a lot of problems going on, but there's a massive opportunity here to get your business model working. And I think it's not being afraid to lose the parts of your model that maybe weren't working before or have become broken through what's happened, and being brave enough to let go of what doesn't working and really embrace and using this time to move towards something that does work. And just seeing that chance to, if you've got overheads that you don't need, maybe members of staff who shouldn't have been in your business, see this as a huge chance to make that remodeling, and don't be afraid to make those changes. Okay. But also make the cuts that you might need to make to get your business to survive.
Yeah.
And make them quickly.
Okay, a message, I guess, for Steve here. A message from, a question rather, from Julian Hall. Julian works in a face-to-face human emotional engagement business, he says. Steve, how can tech keep us distance but support human emotional engagement during this time?
Right, okay. So I do have an opinion on this, because one of the things that eDays has to do is store data, and quite a lot of sensitive data sometimes regarding people's health and well-being. And there's been that debate more recently when people do return back to work, what is the rule going to be around privacy of information regarding sicknesses that people might have that might actually be very important for other people to know that they've had some sicknesses. If it's regarding something that could be COVID-19 and you're sitting next to someone at work and you're back in the office and someone has a symptoms consistent with that illness, really that feels like there should be a duty of the employer or of the teams to inform each other that there's been someone in the team who's had an illness that could have been transferred to us, and therefore there could be a knock-on effect for the dangers of to the health and well-being of your family. So I'm going to be really interested to see what the government does on the guidelines around sickness data when people come back to work. I do think that systems have to keep a distance. The approach that we're taking with wellness and sickness and that sort of side of the wellbeing areas, we're trying to just provide signposts from our application to the NHS, for example. So NHS choices, they've got various symptoms and checkers, when to see a pharmacist, when to see a GP, when to do this, that, and the other. And our system, when absence reasons are logged, it will signpost people to this information rather than to push, making sure that they do it. It's really up to them to make the decision if they seek further guidance, but we can help get them there. And the same with things like virtual GP, that business, that model now of virtual doctors is going to absolutely fly, because, right now you can't go and see GPs really, because it's extremely difficult to get the appointment. It already was, but now you got the additional problem. So what we're trying to do there is say, if you've got a virtual GP service from eDays or from an existing supplier that you've got, let's remind people at the point that they most need it about those services. So keeping a distance, but signposting people to the resources that might help them get well quicker, for example, or in the case of mental illness, maybe seek some counselling from their EAP provider. Hope that answers the question there. I'd love to pick up more with that, the person who answered that question, actually.
Absolutely, Steve. I'm going to move on to my next question, and I want the bravest panellist to come forward, please. And I will name that brave panellist in a second. Have you been impressed with the government's handling of the crisis so far? Now, I'm going to come to you first, Serena, and then probably you, Susan.
I have to say, I really have, yeah. I think they've responded really quickly. I know that inevitably there are things that are left out, and I was on a call with the Small Business Minister last Wednesday, and he was explaining how when you bring these big schemes in very quickly like they have, there will always be hard edges to those schemes, and inevitably those hard edges leave people out. But I think they've brought in schemes that fit the majority of the problems very quickly, and I think they've been very flexible in finding the things around the edges that weren't working. You know, the fact they responded on the furlough date, they responded on various other things, they responded on the loans and the bounce back loan system. So I think, yeah, I've been hugely impressed with the speed and the humanity I think they've shown. Personally.
Okay, Susan and Jake, how is this? Have you been, from your company's point of view, been impressed with the government's response?
I think Serena gave a very good and diplomatic answer, and I think overall, in general, we need to cut our leaders some slack. I don't think I certainly would not be able to make the decisions that they were making. It's an incredibly difficult situation for them to be in. I think, to be honest, it's a mixed bag, like with many of these things. There's yes, I have been impressed, and there's no, I have not. Around yes, I've been impressed with the comprehensive package, particularly around furloughs. I think that put a lot of people's mind at ease early, and many other countries aren't doing that. I think that they started out with this really strong messaging around whatever it takes. You saw Rishi Sunak repeating that quite a lot, and I think that was good at managing perception. I think the regularity and cadence of the briefings and those daily briefings has been good. And I know that regularity of contact is something that we've mapped over for our business to, instead of having one big update, give a lot of small regular updates onto the health of the business. I also like the fact that they are flanked by experts on either side. And I think it's quite funny after the Brexit scenario that experts seem to be back in vogue now, and I like that. But I must admit, there are notes, there are negatives of what they've done. I think we were too slow to move into a lockdown. Not that I'm an expert on it, but it seemed like we were too slow. And it seems like the death rate is higher in the UK, which is worrying. I also, I think, and a lot of business leaders are feeling the same, I'd like to see more about the exit strategy. I know they can't spell out the entire thing, but just some indication so we can start planning. And finally, I'd have liked to see a bit more innovation. I know some countries like South Korea are doing drive-through testing. You've got heat sensors being used in China. You've got countries where they're 3D printing door handles to stop transmission. I'm not really necessarily seeing that level of innovation. So in summary, it's a mixed bag. From a business point of view, I've been quite pleased with what they've been doing.
Thanks, Jake. Susan, if you could maybe answer a kind of related question, really, from Julie Bruff. Julie's a business owner in the construction industry, and she says she's keen to explore Baback's point about using more local services. You're a big, you put Nottingham forward a lot, don't you? How do we persuade the government to make big businesses use more local services, do you think, through the initiatives like frameworks, for example?
Yeah, in addition to having a digital marketing agency, I'm also the chairman of Nottingham's Creative Quarter. And again, there's a lot of local businesses that we could be supporting. There are a lot of initiatives that are taking place. There are ways that we could be formalizing the fact that we should be keeping that money local to the economy. In my mind's eye, however, I think it has more to do with that mindset of businesses that, we are all in this together. So the more that we can keep the money, the local, particularly, I don't have a huge experience, unfortunately, of the construction industry and how it is regulated. But I do know, for example, right here in Nottingham City Centre, much of the construction that is taking place in and around the Broadmarsh, we are using local companies, we are training local apprentices, we are siphoning, recycling that money right back into our local economy. So personally, I'd like to see more of that these big projects are keeping and taking advantage of local resources.
Okay, Thanks, Susan. A question from David Snedden. David's asking, are you seeing companies using the furlough period to train and upskill staff? Sarah and Serena, is that happening? I don't know, Sarah, if you furloughed anybody, you don't have to tell me if you don't want. But
we have, and we're very open about everything that we're doing, and we made it optional to start with. Actually, we asked for volunteers, and then we got to the point where we had some people that literally had absolutely nothing to do, because the nature of our business, for example, the offices are closed, so the reception team had nothing to do. So the rules around furlough are quite tight. We're allowed to obviously communicate with our teams, and they are allowed to undertake training, etc., etc. So we don't have a very bespoke training system for them at the moment in terms of changes that may come downstream, but we are obviously taking every opportunity within the guidelines that we can to make sure that we're keeping the communication flowing, and if there is online training or anything like that, they can do it. I think as we go into the next stage, and remember we've only had people on furlough for a week or two, certainly my organisation, I think as we now start to understand what our new normal is and what our vision for the future is, because we're determined to use this as a catalyst for change, we have an opportunity to now accelerate what would have taken us 2 or 3 years. It's remarkable what people have been able to do when they needed to in a short space of time, and we want to gather that spirit and keep that going. So when I think we now start to emerge what we think our new business will look like and what our new model will be like, that's the time to really start to invest in the training and to really help, particularly with redeployment. I think redeployment is a massive opportunity for us, and the training will be needed as part of that as well.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. One more question, and then I'm going to ask one of the panelists to sum up. It's a question from Richard Starkey, which I want Baback to answer if possible. Baback, do you have a view on how deep the recession, if there is one, will be? How quickly we'll come out of it, how quickly we'll come out of it, and which sectors are best placed to weather the storm?
Yeah, and we've done some work on this together with our partners in Birmingham for the Midlands Engine about the local economy. And the East Midlands economy is forecast to be hit a bit harder than the average, a little bit harder. Unfortunately, the West Midlands gets even a worse stick from us because of the amount of, for example, auto industry that is present there. So we are in a hit, there is no question about it. The size of that at the moment is anybody's guess, and of course dependent on how long the lockdown lasts. At the moment there are varying ranges of hit, about 10% to even 30%, which would be obviously much, much worse to come out of. A lot of people think that this will come in a V shape because once it opens up, there's pent-up demand and we'll get back to normal quickly. I think there will be sectoral variances to this. Some things will not go as fast. So suddenly we're not all going to be flying around the world immediately. It's not going to go back to normal or whatever that normal was immediately in certain sectors. And social distancing, I think, is set to stay with us for a bit longer than once we start opening. There's going to be phased opening. I think government is telling us that anyway. And that means that things are going to be slower in certain sectors than others. Obviously, some sectors may have an absolute boom because they've been agile to respond in terms of health sector, hygiene. I've even heard of positive upturn for the baby sector in a few months' time. But there are opportunities obviously there. But as Serena said, the resilience of organizations and being able to switch and be a little bit brutal about how they've adapted, how they changed their processes, their market reach, etc. And not forgetting in the middle of that, we are here to actually serve. So looking after our core customers and opening new avenues would be the key to this. But it is going to be variable.
Yeah.
And in some sectors, it may last a few years.
Okay.
Sam, can I come in on this, please? I think with the whole recession question or depression, whatever it's going to be, I think we've got to be really careful that we aren't really buying into too much of that. I think the more you focus on recession, downturn, the more you're going to see that everywhere you look. And it's like the opportunity question. It's in the mind of the beholder, really. It's about perception and focus. If you choose to focus on opportunity and growth, and you choose not to look for the reasons why things are going to be bad, you're going to see a different outcome. And I think regardless of sector, there's an opportunity to reframe it and see the best in whatever you can find.
Okay, well, with that in mind, I'm just going to ask Jake to sum up really, and end on a positive because time has nearly beaten us. Jake, what one lesson should business owners learn from this period?
For me, I would say the one lesson has been that a strong team is important in good times, but it's absolutely critical in bad times. A strong team will help get you through this. So whether that means setting up mental health support for your team, whether it means that being entirely honest and transparency with them. And for me, if a good team is critically important, really good leadership is important. And I think right now it's important for business leaders to understand that we have an important role to play in this. It may not seem like that because of the context. You know, we're not important when it comes to NHS workers on the front line, but we can't lose our sense of purpose. Right now, business leaders, your actions will decide what kind of economy is going to come out of this and the jobs that are left in your workforce. So I'd say one key thing for me, for business leaders, is to remember their purpose and remember that what they do now is important.
Okay, Jake, great point to finish on there, I think. Time has beaten us, unfortunately. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in today. I'd like to thank Hallam for supporting the event and all the rest of the panellists for giving their time up. It's been really, really interesting. So thank you very much.